says that they're all 10 years to be senior.
There we go.
Throw it, Joe.
It's fine. We're gonna have minutes eventually, right?
Who does them? I don't even know.
Oh, no.
Gail? Does Gail do them, right?
Yeah.
It is November 4th, 2021. Welcome to the Goffstown Budget Committee. My name is Joe Alexander. I'm chairman of the committee. We're going to start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Spencer, would you like to lead us? It's been too long, man.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next time. I'll get you. Okay, so
Homework assignment, right?
to start the meeting, we're going to have Spencer, you mind doing a roll call for the
Certainly.
record?
Joe Alexander.
Here.
Stacey Bellamore.
Present.
Myself, Spencer Dice, present. Forgive me again for any mispronunciation. Lauren Dukas? Dukas, thank you.
Yep. Present.
Thank you. Greg Flegel.
He's excused.
Bill Cordes.
Present.
Dennis Lynch. Richard Manzo.
Present.
Fred Plett.
He's excused.
Evelyn Rudman.
Here.
Melanie Renfrew Herbert. Hebert?
Present.
Thank you.
Hebert.
Hebert, thank you. Schleier Soon.
Skylar.
Skylar. Perfect, thank you.
Present, right.
Excellent. Richard Fletcher.
Yep.
Jared Talbot.
Here.
Mark LeMay.
Yes, sir.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 12 present, 2 excused, 1 unexcused.
Okay, so that's quorum. Thank you, Spencer.
You're welcome.
So I believe the only business on our agenda tonight is to review the middle school and high school budget, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end to, if anybody wants to bring anything up for new business, but I think that's the only thing on the agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We can also do food service. Everybody should have the food service one.
That's it. That's in this packet.
It's
It's in your packet.
It's in the packet, but it's the smaller sheets that we have. So it should be a relatively short one if we have the opportunity and time to do it.
Okay.
I don't have that in my
I don't
packet.
have
Okay.
Yeah, neither
Say-
do I.
Okay. Fund 21.
I'll double check.
If not, Mr. Gross will do his magic. And if we don't have it, then we don't have it.
And we're gonna have to have another. That's true. We can utilize the printing line in this budget. So if we don't have that, that's fine, because we'll have to have another meeting anyways for, I believe, a teacher contract, a
Yeah,
couple warrant articles.
We have at least 2 warrant articles we're probably going to be bringing forward, as well as a teacher contract. So we definitely will need a additional meeting. I'm probably thinking that will not be ready by next week. So if we need to skip the Tuesday meeting or pivot to town, I think it's something that we can talk about at the end of our review later on for next steps.
That sounds good. Okay, is there anything else before we dive in? Great. All right, so we're going to start on page 40. I'm going to direct the committee page 40 of our packet. It's going to be line 945, so that starts Mountain View Middle School. So we're going to check that out.
Page 42.
I have page 40. That's
Are you on the notes? Nope.
Nope, this is
40?
Oh, I might be using the old one. I'm using the old one.
Need a new one?
Nope.
Okay. Scott, can you talk a little bit about the grant and where that, is the grant showing up in this budget? The
Which
ESSER
grant?
grant?
No. Because
Okay.
that's part of, this is the general fund budget, so there are no grants that are in this budget at all.
Are you referring to the ESSER grants that
ESSER,
we've been
yeah.
receiving?
Yeah.
So what I think what we can do is, ESSER grants is more of a revenue side. So when we get to our CIP, I think we've really marked what we want to target for ESSER grants versus what we would have as possibly a tax appropriation or through the tax cap. So if we want to look at CIP, we can kind of do it at that point.
Okay. Does anybody have anything, page 40? Okay, page 41. So that SRO decrease is going to the district line?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
shifted, so there's a reduction of 84,000 here, and then you saw that it was an addition of 84,000 in the district
Okay.
line. So it's a push.
Spencer?
On reference number 973, general supplies is an additional of 5,000 in new spending.
Yeah, so we have a total of the Cengage math consumables of $15,000, so that's why you're seeing the additional 5,000 there.
Okay, thank you.
So that was the plan for that was a one-time expense?
For the
Yeah.
consumables, it'll be, once they're used, we'd have to replenish them, but we aren't looking at that as being part of our
I
default.
I did not anticipate that being as part of the default. It was our impression, when speaking with the school, that they had to replenish their supply of these. That's what I had heard. Is that what you heard too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else here? Keep going, page 41. 42. Anybody on this page? Okay.
That line of the support salary.
Yeah.
What does that cover?
So this is a 12,000 function line, so that's our special education. This is a raise for that particular group.
All right, so we go to page 43. See a whole lot here. So, quickly, the teacher retirement went down. Why is that? That confuses me why it
It
goes
really
down.
all depends upon who you have for staff. So as you have some staff turnover, if that particular teacher that was replaced comes in at a little bit of a lower pay scale, because the retirement is based upon a percentage, any lower salary of the replacement employee would translate into a lower retirement cost, lower FICA, all those things.
Okay.
Consequently, if you hired someone who came in with like a master's step 9 and the person who left had a bachelor's degree, it would go up. You know,
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for the most part, you'll see decreases in most of that. I think, yeah, that's what I would.
Have we brought
characterize.
on just more teachers at the entry level?
It really depends. I would say that more often than not, when we replace a teacher who's retired, the person that comes in behind them is being paid less, because typically that teacher's retired is like the top end of the grid, shall we say. And even if you hire someone, we do hire people who start off with like master's degrees, but they wouldn't be at that top, that top step. So.
Anything else, page 43? Go to page 44.
So one thing
Go
to
ahead.
note, so if we stop at the top reference line 1033, and I'm going to ask Scott to assist me on this. So you're going to see some reductions in books and printed media, and this was for us being able to shift to another cost center if I remember right. So this is really the building administrator saying, what lines do we need to cut because we need other things? So looking to not just add new budget, but trying to replace existing lines where we can reduce them to support those things.
And that was exactly when it was Lyle, who's our curriculum coordinator, said, yeah, we cut that line because of that Cengage Big Ideas math. So we tried to offset one to pay for the other one.
So when you saw that $5,000, we're trying to take that money from other lines. So it's not necessarily new to the budget, it's being decremented in other lines to support that ad.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else this page? All right, go to 45.
I'm trying to think, we have dean of students, curriculum coordinator.
And an actual assistant
And an
principal.
actual assistant principal in this line.
Okay, so the, which one was being paid for from the grant? Or is that a new position we're trying to add? The remediation, is it like?
That's
remediation?
totally, that's a totally.
Different
other-
position?
Totally different position.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking roughly 3.5%?
We budgeted at 3.
3? Okay.
Right.
And what did we give, I'm just curious, last teacher contract, is it typically, like, is it normally do 3? I know every year it's been
It all depends
roughly,
upon, you have to factor in.
like the step in.
The step
Yeah.
and grid adjustment, so I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it depends where you are. In some cases, it's more than 3%.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I do just want to make sure we're at least
Right.
giving teachers the same raise we're giving administrators, and
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember because the contract was around, well, it was 3 years ago
Yeah.
for the GEA, and it was differentiated between if you had a bachelor's versus a master's. There's a little bit of difference in there as well.
Generally speaking, I would say that it's the exact opposite. I think from a percentage-wise basis, our teachers, percentage-wise, get higher bumps when you factor in the step and increases in grids.
Yep.
Okay.
anything page 48, go to 49. What's that 500 MISC expenditure? I'm looking like,
Miscellaneous?
490,
yeah,
891.
117.
That was the owner's dinner?
honors dinner, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Was that before like a booster, or was that paid for
Um,
from PTO? How was that funded?
It's typically been funded out of the budget. Sometimes you'll have you're right, they call it Mountain View Partnership is the
Yeah.
group there. But what's happened is that with COVID, a lot of these groups didn't fundraise, so they haven't put those types of things, in their budget. You heard that from the principal at Maple Avenue as well. They haven't been able to do a lot of those things, so they've kind of cut back. And that's really, I think, why the administrative staff at Mountain View added that, just to cover the food costs.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, Lauren.
Just to add on to that, I recently joined the MVP, and they are planning for this year to be growing their monetary funds. They have a big calendar raffle there that's coming out, so I don't think this thing could be permanent. They're cognizant of, we didn't fundraise, we're asking for a lot more. So they're planning like some pretty big things just to try to add to their coffers, so would hope it would not continue.
Anybody else here? You go to the next page. Evelyn.
Yes, on line 1185,
Yeah.
can you explain why there's such a large jump in the water sewer budget?
Yeah, so recently, the school board has approved an irrigation system for the football fields down at the lower field. We didn't have that before, so we're budgeting in the additional water that would be needed for that irrigation.
All right, we'll go to page 51.
Yep.
So that ends Mountain View. Hey Scott, the
Yes.
other professional services right at the end, is that special ed? I'm sorry, I'm looking at
Hold on.
2,800 function?
1213.
These are dues for, so we're as part of the area agreement, we have to be accredited by the National Association of Schools and Colleges. It's an accrediting agency that does a review of I think it's every 5 or 10 years, where they come in, they check your curriculum, they do interviews with the community, and to make sure that there's high standards at both the middle school and the high school. And when, in terms of like New Boston's relationship with Goffstown, they had wanted this in the area agreement. It's a standard of accreditation, is just like if it was an accredited college or business school. Most high schools and colleges, it's a very important thing to be accredited.
Yep.
And that's what that is. So you have to pay dues every year to maintain that accreditation.
Got it.
And that's what that is.
Thank you.
Does that show up? It shows up in many places here, that same line. Is that for all? is that
You
what
should
it's
see
all
it in 2, because we're only accredited in 2 schools, Mountain View and the high school. We don't, there is no, at least to my knowledge, there's no accrediting agency for elementary schools. It's only middle school and high school.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have function 2,800 in our blue packets.
Yeah.
That's why
Okay.
I think we're
All
asking
right.
the question on it. Maybe just a note that we have to put that in there
All right.
next time.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, Lauren.
Thank you. Line 1201, the 3550, is that the pests, or was
Yeah,
that's the
it's a
pests?
combination of that, and then we replace our playground mulch on an annual basis.
Oh, okay.
And there's been a slight increase in cost on the playground mulch. But the 90% of that increase is the exterior pest management issues.
Thank you, couldn't remember. Thank you,
Yeah.
Scott.
There's actually quite an odd state regulation with that playground mulch.
Oh, really?
Like the students can't play on the playground mulch until you can stick the pole in like a certain number
There's
of
certain,
feet.
right, there's certain heights of playground mulch, and it's pretty complicated. Yep. How'd you know that? You read the statute or something?
Your representative, what do you think?
I know
all
that,
laws.
but it's like, it's kind of a,
He's done his research.
yeah. Don't screw
Laws to
with
get rid of,
Joe.
laws we don't need. Anything else for Mountain View?
12 inches.
All right, we're gonna go.
Joe didn't
sorry.
tell you about his previous landscaping career.
There's a long list of laws I just know for no reason.
Oh.
All right, all right, we're gonna go right on to the high school.
So let's start right off the top, Mr. Chair. If we look at line 1216, you're going to see that we did have a reduction in our overall teacher salaries, and this is because we did transfer one of our codes as an instructional coach to, I believe, the district line. So this is, again, one of the items where we're taking it from a building and putting it into the district that we already looked at on the prior meeting.
Okay.
And the next line, 1218 is the same thing.
Yep.
Reduction.
All right, we're gonna move to 52. Okay, anything 52? Evelyn?
Yes, please, line 1232.
Workers' comp?
Over the past 2 years, you've had a large jump in your workers' comp premium.
Well, we're reducing our workman comp's base from last year by about $700. So our budget, for our actuals versus budget has been different.
Right, but over the last several, 21 actuals, or 18, now your base, you're estimating at 23.
So the workers' comp is our HR director calculates the workers' comp based upon the folks that are part of that particular function series. So Evelyn, I can check into that for you. And I have access to some of her data. It would be hard for me to do this right now, but I can certainly follow up on that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? But generally speaking, we get our workers' comp, so the committee knows, workers' compensation, we use Primex, who's our insurance carrier for not only property and liability coverage, but also for unemployment and workers' comp, and those rates are kind of set by them. And then also, depending, what you might see, Evelyn, is that when you look at the actuals, we had a couple of, I don't know if this is going to satisfy you in terms of an answer, but for the last 2 years, we've had what's called contribution holidays because the workers' comp experience has been lower,
Right.
and then it kind of goes to more normalized rate. But I have to check into that one because it's in that particular line, it looked like more of an anomaly than in some others. So I'll
Okay.
check into that for you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to page 53. I see on 53 a dues and fees, 1267, what's that for?
Let me just get to that.
I see it on the chart.
Now we have an increase all-state music participation, 15 students at $225 apiece, which
Okay.
brings us to an additional $3,375.
Do we fund all the sports, all state?
Yeah, so what happens is that in this particular budget, and I think Kim McCann tried to explain it when she
Yeah.
was here from the high school, is we're trying to have more equity in terms of sports and non-sports, and right now, well, you can see what it is for our athletics. In these particular cases, we provide like transportation to all these athletic events for our performing arts folks, for the most part, with the exception of, like, say, a festival, which I think some of them are at, like, right now as we speak up in Plymouth State. we don't really do much for those groups. So this was, you'll see this, and then you'll see on the performing arts side, in terms of royalties for a musical, we're trying to put that into the budget and then avoid what's been going on right now where we have almost like a booster club or a student group that's collecting ticket monies and then paying people out. From an accounting perspective, an audit function, our auditors have banged us on this thing, I think, now 3 years in a row, saying you need to put this in your budget. It's crazy how you're doing it. So this is one of those things to try to have equity between athletics and non-athletics.
And right, okay.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Cool. We'll go to page 54. Page 55.
The line 1311,
Yep.
and then we go down a little farther, and the 1315 is other professional services. How come there's two lines there?
They're different function codes. So as you see, you have like their fund, location, function. So for 1213, for 1311, it is function code 1410, which if you use your blue paper, that is what we classify as our co-curricular. And then the other one is 1420, which is athletics. So it's differentiating the co-curriculars versus the athletics so that we can see those different line items.
And this kind of goes in I was gonna say concert, that's a bad pun, in tandem with what I just stated, and you're gonna see things like in line 13, 14, dues and fees, the $7,300 represents the royalties for performances that you put on. Again, what has happened in the past is that it was kind of done privately where it was Booster Club and a student activity fund were paying for these things. They were taking the ticket dollars and then reimbursing the district after we paid these people. It was just an accounting, just a bad
Nightmare.
way of doing things. So the model that we're looking at right now is to include these in the budget. We're still going to charge a ticket to go to see a performance, but hopefully it's not going to be, to break the bank for a family, because, I think the last year, I think it was like $10 for students, and don't quote me, I think it was like $12 or $13 for adults. And that's, taking your family and it costing you $50 to see a high school, performance is kind of steep. So what we're trying to do here is absorb this in our budget, again, to provide some of that equity, and then all of the ticket sale receipts would just simply go back as a revenue to the general fund. And you'll call it a day, that respect. But that's why all of those, you'll see that there are, it's almost, I think it totals up to almost $15,000 between the royalties and the dues and the musicians and all that, just to be clear on that.
Thanks.
Stacy?
Yeah, so you probably just tried to explain it, but it didn't wrap through my head correctly.
Yeah.
So how did we get to this number? So are you saying in 2019 we contributed 5,000, but then there was another 5,000 raised, and that's how you're getting to this number?
Yeah, so a lot of those monies were raised by a combination of a booster organization for performing arts, along with ticket sales, which the booster and student activities would take that money, and then the district would then pay out all these different royalties, pay out the musicians, who's the pianist and the percussionist and the choreographer, not choreographer, but, the different folks who are responsible for the theater type production. And then they would then pay us back, and it was just, from an auditing perspective, like, they despise this. So
But the number did equal that, so.
Yeah, and so at some point, and then, I don't want to be quoted on the exact number, but probably somewhere in the area of about $15,000 is what a lot of these royalties and fees and contracted services for musicians, would cost. So we try to build that into the budget. And then correspondingly, and I explained this when I did the initial presentation, I don't think that we are not going to get dollar for dollar in terms of our ticket sales. And that's really not what I think the school board or the superintendent's approach is. We want more and more people to attend these performances. We want students to attend. So we recognize that there will be more expenditures than the gate receipts that we get from, or the receipts that we get from, the ticket sales.
Okay, thank you.
Richard?
Scott, I think the question that I have is, are we replacing student participation fees with just paying it out of the general fund?
Help me understand what you mean by
So
student.
I'm not talking about ticket fees, but I am talking about things like participation fees in sports teams. Like I know lacrosse students used to have to pay to play lacrosse at the high school. Are we talking about shifting that cost off of students onto the school district at large, or are we talking about just putting the numbers that were already there into this piece of paper?
In my opinion, it's the latter, but I want to explain that. When you're talking about like the fees that you have to pay to put on the royalties, for example, you're doing a musical and it's Fiddler on the Roof or something, you have to spend $5,000 for the royalties to put that on.
Yeah.
The prior methodology was for the booster club
Yeah.
to, fund that through, and then privately kind of done. And that didn't seem to be, right. The hard part when you're trying to compare, like, say, athletics to performing arts is, there's a difference between, hey, we're gonna, students are gonna pay for practicing under, like, boosters are gonna pay to practice in a dome, right?
Right.
Versus you have to pay for the officials who are gonna referee your game. And I think, in my mind's eye, I'm just trying to equate the officials' fee and the royalties. You kind of need them to participate in it. And there's always going to be there's always going to be instances in which parents and students are contributing for above and beyond, types of things, So in, football is a bad example because we really don't fund football. The Booster Club helps out like tremendously. But in other sports, booster clubs will typically pay for things like warm-ups, like so a soccer booster, is not paying for officials, but they might pay for a nice, warm-up sweats and top for the athlete.
Right.
Or you might have, so those.
We have like the volleyball teams, they have the boosters. So what it comes down to is a lot of our new club sports, they don't have the boosters pieces to really support that infrastructure that the teams need. So we acknowledge there are fees that students and parents pay for that. But as things get more and more involved, we're trying to look at, okay, can the boosters really come up to pay those fees, or can we at least have equity across the different campaigns of athletics and co-curriculars to make sure that we have equity in all those items?
Sure. You had mentioned, you cited something like $225 per student for participation. What I'm asking is, are students paying that, or is the school district paying that?
Can you help me?
On the prior lines.
The All-State
1267.
Music.
In the past, students paid for that.
But now, are they paying for it still?
They are still, right now, they are paying for that.
In this budget, are they going to be paying for them?
No.
In this budget, they wouldn't, because it's.
If this budget passed, then for that particular example, no, it would be built into the
Right.
default budget.
Right.
But you're telling me that club sports don't have the booster clubs to support,
No, not all.
or they don't have the booster clubs to support the club sports, and neither do
It's not equal.
music, the arts, anything else. Why are we putting music into the budget, but we're not putting other sports in, these
No.
club sports?
We do have,
Right.
we have had theater for quite some time. We've
Yep.
had a lot of extracurriculars that were non-athletics. We've had those traditionally for a long time in the school. We didn't pay those. We're looking to actually put those in. So are we covering everything? No, we're not covering everything. Are we looking to try to at least start providing some equity across the program, so it's not just athletics? Absolutely.
Right.
So then the question still remains, though, why are you listing simple booster club transactions that would normally be paid for by booster clubs and then just not put on the books in here, but other booster clubs aren't being listed? Isn't that sort of an accounting no-no too, or?
I think I want to maybe
it's not
clarify a
all
couple
booster
things. If you were to look at our existing budget, I can only think of two items. And I'll look at it again. I think it's two. So we have a very modest allowance for a choreographer, and we have a very modest allowance for a costumer, okay? But in terms of, there is no allowance in our existing budget for a music director, a artistic, a set person, none of that. Now, as Jared alluded to, I don't think we're never gonna be paying for 100%, of anything. I think what we're trying to do here are to handle some of the baseline things. So, so just like it's important to have a coach, of a volleyball team, if you're gonna put on a musical, you're gonna need a music director, you're gonna need a choreographer, you're gonna need someone who's gonna do costumes, and just trying to put those baseline things in. And again, similar to the example that I gave you before, you don't have officials and, blowing the whistle in a performance, hopefully not. But by the same token, you have, those royalties, or you might have, and similar to uniforms, you might have an allowance for costumes, things like that, or some dues and fees. So that's what we're trying, what we're trying to accomplish. Nothing more, nothing less. There's always going to be, I guess, slight inequities in anything. I think you could argue that all across the board. But right now, to me, in my opinion, and I think the school board feels the same way, is that it was kind of, the inequities were almost too great. It's like we have brought on a lot of different sports over the years, and as you see all the different coaches. But on the performing arts side, it's like you had a choreographer and a costumer at maybe $4,000, and that was it. The rest was all done, through this crazy shell game of ticket sales and money flowing back and forth. So I hope I answered your question.
I'm not sure if you did, but I'm gonna drop it for
Okay,
now.
I'm sorry. If we can always chat later.
Yeah,
I don't
sure,
want
that's fine.
you to feel that, I don't know, we can always chat later.
I'm not trying to fight with you
Yeah,
here. It just seems
and I know
like,
you're not, yeah.
You're trying to address an inequity here, and it just seems to me like you're creating new discrepancies, and also
No.
the more you try to include without including everything, the exclusion becomes more targeted. I see no reason why lacrosse kids should have to pay if band kids don't. I see no reason why band kids should have to pay if football kids don't.
And what I'm trying to say is that the football players and the lacrosse players have a coach that is paid for by the district. They are on a uniform cycle that is paid for by the district. They have a modest
It's a big time
supplies that are paid for by the district.
time
program.
Are there other things that lacrosse may have to pay for in terms of, their own, say, equipment, right? As I think lacrosse, you might have to buy your own pads or something like that. Of course, that's I'm not disputing that, but the vast majority of what lacrosse or football is pretty much funded by the district, and all the transportation. That's another biggie, is that when you go and you play 10 away games, the district pays for the bus to take you there, whereas on the performing arts side, there is almost, with the exception of these competitions, like All-State, where you try out and you go to a competition or a concert, there is no transportation provided by
But
them.
Mr. Manzo brings up a great point, and I think it's something that should be celebrated, is we understand that there are definitely disparities between all of our organizations. This is one of our attempts to start the process, to bring those in. Are we going to get them all the first time? No. Are we going to get them all the second time? Absolutely not. But I think, at least from a policy perspective, that's the way the board's trying to go towards. And yes, you're absolutely right. We're not going to hit it the first time, but I think as long as the policy is, let's try to do what we can incrementally and get it there, that's approved by the voters, approved by this board. I think that's the approach that the school board has been taking.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else in this conversation here? The one thing I'm just not sold on is that $7,300 dues and fees, because I feel strongly that if you're going to charge somebody, you don't just like I feel like we're subsidizing, the taxpayers are subsidizing part of the ticket, but not the whole ticket. Like if you're gonna make it free, make it free. Like don't just charge and give money back to the boosters. So I think it's like or give that money back, like have that money in a circulating fund. Like I just don't understand the $7,300 to make the ticket price less than just the standard charging what you charge. And I think that, you know, if there's somebody that has a strong interest in going to a high school theater performance, $7 or $14 or $20 on a ticket is not going to deter them from doing that. And I think that, you know, throwing $7,300 in the default budget to subsidize part of the ticket price, I'm not necessarily sold on it.
I wanted to share.
So the $7,300, I know that everybody doesn't have the notes, so I wanted to say what it was. It was this particular money is for the royalties and rights for 2 annual music productions. So we do 2 productions a year for our team.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not intended to subsidize.
Which one is the line where we cut the price of the ticket?
That would be that one. So the school board or the school district
The one that I'm talking about.
Yes, is going to pay for the 2 events, we're going to pay $7,300 for the royalties, which should drop the ticket prices so that parents could, you know, bring the
Make it
entire family
affordable.
instead of paying the $50 as the example that Scott gave. So are we making it free? No, we're not making it free. Are we reducing it so that, you know, we're not having to pay $50 for mom and dad to take their 2 kids to see the sibling, you know, at a play? That's what that's going for.
Yeah. I don't know what the mood of the committee is, but
I think I would try to characterize this as the $7,300 would be the royalties for these 2 musical productions. It's very, very similar, say, paying for the officials, allowing you to play the game. What we have right now is that if you go to, say, a football game, I don't know what the cost is, because I think it's $5 or something.
Not all of us get them for free, Scott.
I have a press pass.
you know, you pay
killing me.
$5 for a football game.
Right.
Like,
So-
I want to go see like the Grizzlies. I'm going to go pay
Right.
$5
Right.
and see the
But
Grizzlies. I don't care if it's $20.
wouldn't the price
but
of
some
that
people
ticket
do.
be $15
Right.
or
If
$20
you were to-
if
right.
the
If-
district
Some people
wasn't
couldn't do that.
paying for
That's-
the officials?
That's my point.
The
is
district
that
is paying for
had
the
you-
required
that
items, right?
You just made my point.
Sorry.
But don't
I mean
we,
to cut
don't we
items, sorry.
pay
Sorry.
for, don't we give a faculty a stipend to be the theater advisor? Like we do it in theater too. It could be, we don't pay any faculty member to be a.
Not in the
Any
performing
stipends
arts.
whatsoever?
Only choreographer and only, there's money in the current budget for a
Music director.
choreographer and for a
Costumer?
costumer.
A
That's
costumer,
it.
sorry.
So
Right.
that's why, so what we're trying to do, and again, as part of negotiations on.
If I may.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
So stipends is a touchy subject for the school board. We're, again, equity kind of situation where why are we paying for a yearbook? Where we have a yearbook class, why is that considered a stipend when somebody teaches a class? You know, we shouldn't be paying a stipend for that. So the school board is going through and looking at all of our stipends, and we're trying to do not only the stipends that we pay, but what stipends we don't pay, and try to make sure that we have the equity pieces associated with those. So again, this is one of those situations where we aren't there yet. We have a subcommittee that is being, that has members of our Teachers Association, has a member of our school board. Our middle school principal is also a member, going through all of our stipends that we have within the school to say, you know, is this stipend too high? Is this stipend too low? Why don't we have a stipend for a bowling team coach or for Model Congress, for all the time that the teachers or the volunteers are giving for those types of, you know, for those types of events. So again, this is an ongoing and deliberate process we're doing. We're at the very beginning. I don't think we're at the very end, because we're going to continue to evaluate those. And I invite anybody to always come to the school board to participate in any of those policy discussions.
Thanks, Jared.
Mr. Chair, if I
Evelyn.
could. I think that what this comes down to is if the school district is already paying for football uniforms and referees, etc., they're not going to be able to have a conference game without those items. When you're doing a musical production, you cannot do that at all without those licenses and royalties. So it is a necessary item for the theater department to be able to do those productions. It's not optional. You have to pay for licenses for the use of music and for the copyright. So it is necessary for that program, period. You cannot do a production without paying those fees.
Anyone else? All right, let's move on. Let's go to 56.
Well, I have another question.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So I think, I'm trying to word this in a way that I think makes sense to you. So my question is, how did we pick this option as the one to help with? Because I think Richard makes a really good point, is that writing the equities of all this could be costly years down the road for the taxpayers, right? Like, we're going to try to write all these things. So how are we going to manage, so 73 to this group this year, and then lacrosse comes back and says, well, wait a minute, theater got 73 and football gets 15, so now we want 10. So I'm just wondering how are you all going to pick? And then why did you all pick rights and royalties for 7,300? I think that would be easy to understand.
Yeah.
And not pick maybe the $5,000 item or the $3,000 item.
So
We're going to go Jared and then Richard.
So the reason why these specific ones are first is because of auditing. That's why we targeted these, is because audit has brought this to our attention repeatedly, and we're trying to rectify those. But that's now bringing us to the conversation of how far do we need to go? That's a conversation that we're continuing to have.
On top of that, the point was made about ticket prices for the football game. It may be only $5 per ticket, but there's also 12 games per season. Productions take much longer than weekly to put on. That's still costing the same amount to take your 2 kids to go see everything, another sibling does on a football field. But even beyond that, we're talking about $7,300 for a music director. Are there other things that we could spend that money on to allow more students to participate in an extracurricular for free, rather than just having this one chunk of $7,300 go to one single program?
So the $7,300 is going to the royalties to put on the 2 productions. It's not going to an individual person or a stipend. That was just mentioned.
But it's still, you're also not only paying for one referee, you're not paying for only a single football field, you're not paying for a single bus. You're paying for many things in all of this.
The district is covering this.
That point, really. It's just, it seems like at this point we're going in circles about like whether this is appropriate to do or not, and it is. This just isn't the right way.
You probably have between 40 and 50 students that participate in the performing arts. So in that sense, it's not like it's a 12 or 13 person basketball team. I mean, and it's something that when you're talking about a couple of performances, you're absolutely correct. I mean, they will rehearse and practice for 2 to 3 months before they put that particular show on. I think, right, wrong, or indifferent, when you look at the number of students that participate in, say, the performing arts side, and again, these are, if you've ever been to these things, they're awesome performances. And when you look at, in totality, what one would spend on having those 40 or 50 kids participate in multiple performances throughout the course of the year, and you take a look at, on the flip side, on the athletic side, for an example, how much the cost is for athletics, it's a fraction of that. So I want to agree with you that it's always going to be something that you're chasing, right, in terms of equity and more and more and more. But what we're trying to do, and the school board's been doing this over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, and trying, like, in terms of stipends, and trying to make it as equitable as possible.
It's like a
And
long process then.
I'm sorry?
It seems like a really long process then, and I'm well aware that it is, but still the question remains, why are we doing it in this order?
Simply,
Why don't we
it is
add-
exactly because of, so for the last 3 years, we have had audit findings on performing arts in particular, because they're funneling, in some cases, $30,000-$40,000 through a combination of student accounts and booster clubs, and they basically said, you need to put this in your budget. It is too ripe for misallocation of missing funds, and it really needs to be more under district control. And that is why we focused on this in particular.
Okay, we're gonna go Lauren and then Evelyn. Did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, if, for the equity purpose, if someone makes a team in one of the athletics, is there a scholarship fund set up so kids can access that, so we're not always demanding that students pay? Because I know the conversation has been brought up of, why are we not allowing more kids to play for free? Is there something that we are supporting our athletes by?
I want to just clarify, like, a little bit of a misconception here. So we don't have necessarily pay to play here. Some
Right.
districts do, where you have to cut a check for $200 if you're going to play. That being said, some sports require less financial assistance than others. In the case of, say, soccer, there's not a whole lot that you need to do. There's a ball, there's a uniform, there's referees, et cetera. But in the case of, say, football, it's much more expensive. It's the equipment, it's the helmets that have to be reconditioned every year. So in that case, but if there's ever a situation in which a student does not have the financial means to participate, the administration does address that through a variety of different means. There are private individuals who will contribute, so the principal and his staff knows those situations and is able to assist any student who feels as if money is an obstacle for them to participate in anything.
That was,
And that includes things like the prom,
Yeah.
you name it.
that was my question.
Yeah.
So as far as accessibility.
Right.
Where it's not that we're not addressing athletics, we're not disallowing people.
Correct, and that goes, I'm talking across the board.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was just my question
Yeah.
on the scholarship end of it or the financial aspect.
Right.
Thank you.
Evelyn?
Scott, can you give us an idea, because we're looking at two different things here. We're looking at co-curricular, other professional services for 8,300. Well, their professional services are 8,300. For the athletics, other professional services are 87,000. Can you give us an idea of what that 87,000 entails as far as all the athletics that are involved?
Yep.
You got the breakdown?
Yeah, I have it in front of me. So approximately $41,000 and change is for your officials. So these are the referees, all right?
And which sports are these two, if you have that?
They range. I mean, it's almost every sport requires an official. So there's easily a dozen sports, if not more. You also have game management, and that is you have to have an official scorer. So you can imagine whether it's a hockey game or whether it's a basketball game, there's somebody who's the official scorer, somebody who has to manage the clock. And then you also have, depending upon the sport, you have someone who's kind of managing the situation. Some sports require more game management than others. Football is more of a game, more people go to those games. Hockey games, more people go to those. Swimming, you might not have somebody, at a swimming competition. You have police details that are that we have. If you have crowd sizes that are going to be more than a couple of hundred people, a police detail is something that we do incur. Athletic training is the biggest one there, one of the biggest ones. So all of our sports, we have a contracted service, so you can imagine that if an athlete gets hurt, whether they be playing on the soccer field or on the basketball court or on the football field, there's an athletic trainer there who can administer first aid and stabilize the situation for the athlete.
As well as taping and stuff like that.
Taping, all that, ice, and then all of our students on the athletic side go through concussion protocols. I shouldn't say all, the vast majority of them, if they're as part of a contact sport, they have to do baseline concussion testing before they start. This way, if they are involved and they have a head injury, they're able to look at that baseline to see if there's been any type of changes. So those are the largest, those are the components of about that 87,000 that you see.
Okay, so which sports, you mentioned football, hockey, swimming, is there wrestling?
Volleyball, wrestling,
volleyball,
basketball,
girls-
lacrosse,
girls
swimming,
softball,
softball, you
baseball.
cheer, you got it, all of them.
And the breakdowns of those, if we wanted them, because I don't think Scott gave. Officials was $41,000, some change. Game management that he talked about was $7,800. Police detail was $7,100. Athletic training was the next biggest one at $30,600. And that concussion review is a little under $1,000. That's what makes up the bulk of that item that we talked about.
And what does the 8,300 for other professional services in the co-curricular category?
So the 8,300 is for, we got peer outreach leadership training at $200, performing art workshop at $2,000, choreographer at $1,800, costume designer at $1,800, musicians for our 2 school productions is $2,500. And then the ad is 5 musicians at $2,500 new. It's for 5 musicians per production.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else on performing arts or music? So I'm just going to throw this out here. So I see if we refer to the high school PowerPoint, if everybody has that in front of them, I see a few lines for performing arts. I see all-state music participation. I see the $2,500 for PIP musicians. I see the $2,000 for support actual cost expenditures of musical production. So we're funding the cost of the production. And then the last thing is the rights and royalties. So while I think it's important, I think that, if we kind of did this in a stepped approach instead of funding all $15,000 this year, maybe wait till next year. I personally, I can make a motion. I hate doing this as chair, but I'm going to do a motion just to cut the 7,300 rights and royalties for this year. And then, most of us will be here next year. We'll understand if that comes back. We kind of see what effect it has on the theater and go from there. Does anybody else agree with me? Any second at all?
I second that.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on that, 7,300?
What line's that now?
That is line,
1314, I believe, Mr. Chair, is what you're referring
yep,
to?
I'm looking line 1314, dues and fees for the 7,300. Just keep that steady from last year, just keep it at 3,800.
And this specifically would cut the royalties and rights that we talked about.
Yeah. All right, if there's no discussion, we'll just go with a hand vote. So all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, those opposed? Perfect, love that. Okay, so the motion fails. All right, so we will move on. Page 56. Evelyn?
Yeah, line 1321. Information access fees increase of $7,700.
So I'm going to need Scott's help on this one. I believe that this is new software that we're using for D1 schools, as well as, actually, this is software that we're using not only for athletics, but for other things.
Is this Huddle?
This is
Yeah.
a huddle that we talked about as part of our overview presentation.
So, similar to what Jared had mentioned about half an hour ago, was, you'll see a few lines down, the athletic director cut his replacement equipment line by $3,400. We cut different lines in the high school budget to achieve the balance for that increase. So, we talked about this during the presentation. Huddle is a service that provides our student athletes, and actually you can use it for performing arts as well, where you can record your practices and your actual games, and then the coach and/or the advisor is allowed, it can demonstrate to the team and the individual players kind of what maybe the wrong position that they were in at the time, and you've seen, I don't know if you've ever seen where they put like circles around the particular athletes. You went this way, you should have gone that way. Our athletic director, like I said, he feels passionately about using game film. We saw this especially during COVID when we used it, because we didn't always have kids like in a locker room on a bulletin board. They had to do it from their house, on a computer. But it is extremely valuable, and for a coach to take corrective actions and show how someone might be out of position, what they're doing right or wrong. It's also a very important tool for colleges and college recruiting. So part of what Huddle does, because all of these games and practices are recorded, it helps kids get athletic scholarships, and they're able to take that Huddle film and send it off to coaches at various universities, and then in many instances, colleges and college coaches have access to the overall Huddle, and they can pull Huddle for a particular athlete. Does that sound, I think does that sound?
So I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it looks like he's cut $4,700 out of his budget to try to balance that out. And the notes say that it was $9,400 for the Huddle package. Do you have any of that allocated to the other uses, or just
I
you're
don't
just filing it all under
think
athletics?
that, let me check that, Evelyn, 1420, 643. So included in that, in all of that, is $400 for coach evaluation software. That's for the athletic director to evaluate how his coaches how their coaches are doing. There's concussion tests that's also part of a software package, $1,375, and then the Huddle license for all sports is $9,600. So that gets you to the $11,375.
So did you have part of this package already, or?
For Huddle, this is something that the football team had implemented as part of their program.
All right.
And so it's not as expensive to get the whole system. We're just trying to bring it in-house for the gymnasium and some of the other sports to
All
use
right,
as
thank
well.
you.
And this is also, if I may, I'm sorry, this is also an issue where in the past, I think the football booster club, and there was one other sport, I think it might have been field hockey, where the booster, or somebody paid for part of it. And what we found is that we want to make sure that this is available for all athletes, male and female. Where it started off in football, then I think the booster club in field hockey they raised some money, so they kind of jumped on it, but then other sports didn't. And so this is almost like I'm not going to say requirement, but it's almost, you have to have it if you're going to compete at a division. Most Division III and II schools have it, but Division I, they all have this because they're all looking at the game film of their competitors. and it gives you, just try to, it's almost puts you on an even playing field, much less gives you any type of competitive advantage.
Stacy?
So this is an every year expense though, correct?
It will be.
So it'll be these
It's
10,000?
it's software. Now, it also comes with hardware, so this company has put a mounted camera in our gym, but they also give you a portable camera, and it might even be 2 portable cameras that coaches can then use,
It is.
right?
Yeah,
Is that right?
One for each end of the field.
Right.
Yeah.
The good thing
Well,
about the,
sorry.
Go ahead.
just to expand on it, the good thing about the portables is that, again, this is something that we can use in theater. You know, it's not just going to be athletics, but it can be used for those other items as well.
Okay,
Great.
Stacy?
What do we use now? Besides, well, obviously football's already using this, but what do the other sports use now?
Right now, we paid for Huddle due to COVID, so they have it now. So we're trying to keep this still in, you know.
So there's
to
not really
continue.
negotiation here? if it's
No,
already
no,
used, so
no,
just-
because.
What did they use before then? this year?
Okay, so there was only 2, I'm only aware of two sports that used it, the other ones didn't do anything. In some cases, what some sports would do is they would videotape it with like a camcorder. But Huddle has way better capabilities than someone just doing a camcorder and showing it, so.
All right, anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Page 57.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, Lauren.
Line 1368, the 11,582, is that the third guidance counts? No, that was Mountain View, I'm sorry, that we're on guidance, we're on, my apologies, we're on the
1368.
high school. So what is that, 11,000?
All right, so if you recall, when we went over, for those of you who were here, in the new column, you have a salary pool. And the new column is actually the raises that were distributed this year.
Oh, this is
all right?
step?
Right?
Yeah.
So this was that one person
Oh.
who, I'm sure there was 2 last year, that they were significantly below their peers in surrounding districts, and so that is one individual in guidance.
In guidance, okay.
That, right.
Thank you.
All right, go to page 58. '59. '60. '61. '62.
Just to point out on page 62, Mr. Chair, if we look at reference line, the very last one, 1488, you're seeing a reduction of $5,000 there for printing and binding. This is another situation where we give yearbook, or not yearbooks, I'm sorry.
Agenda books.
What are they?
Agenda books.
Agenda books, guidance books, kind of like rules, responsibilities for our students. instead of giving them to freshmen through seniors, we're only giving them to freshmen through sophomores, so that they have them. Juniors and seniors, we expect them to have them, and of course, they're always online, so this is one of the situations where we're looking at targeting what can we reduce in order to offset some of the increases as well.
Great.
And this one was one that was specifically to try to help on that huddle situation. So there was a discussion between the administration to say, okay, we think this huddle is so important that we should cut this, and that's what they did.
I'm still a paper agenda book guy, though. Like, I'm like, you know. So would I have access to it if I was a
Yes.
junior at Goffstown High
Yes.
School?
It's
Okay.
available electronic, and you would have received one during your freshman and sophomore years.
Okay, but
That you could always-
a printed one.
You're
one.
surprising me, man.
I'm old school.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's good, it's cool, it's cool, I'm good with it.
I like it.
All right. Anything else? So we're going to round out the rest of this high school budget, 63, 4, and 5. Just take a look at these, take a minute or two.
Most notable, as we see, is propane on line 64. That's at 1529. We know that there's going to be an increase in propane, and any kind of cost increase per gallon, is not part of our default, is the way that we do it. So if there's a price change, that is considered new funding that we put in our column. That's why you see that increase there.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Yep.
High school budget. All right. So what we have left in the school side of the budget is the warrant articles. We have CIP stuff too, I assume.
Well, when we say CIP,
Just to look, I mean,
yeah,
can you
so
present us with a chart of it?
I did provide that, didn't I put it in there?
I do not.
I don't see any
Sent it out.
CIP stuff in here, that's why.
Oh,
Like, you know
okay.
how you give us the little.
Yeah,
like, thing?
yeah, I can get you that. Okay.
Yeah, if you could forward that to the committee, Scott, that'd be
CIP.
great. We have
Okay.
CIP, we have food service budget we don't have
Yep.
access to right
Okay.
now. And then, whatever warrant articles, when those are ready and voted out of the school board, I'd like to see those sent to the committee as well. But other than that, school side budget, I don't think we have anything else.
So
Correct me
the
if
other
I'm wrong.
thing that we'll also have for you, the school board has to take action on it. It doesn't have any impact on the budget committee, is the SAU services is going to decrease because there was just a release of the town valuations for Goffstown's town valuation was done in August. New Boston requested a long extension. They just, I think it was released on Friday. And the way that the SAU apportionment is done, they take a look at what is the value of all the properties in New Boston, what's the value of all properties in Goffstown. Goffstown did a revaluation a few years ago, and it's around $1.7 billion, roughly, all right? New Boston, their previous valuation was around $650 million, and it just bumped up to over 900 and some odd million dollars, a 36% bump. The formula, in terms of what percentage is paid for by New Boston and Goffstown, it was around less than 22% was New Boston's responsibility of the SAU budget. Goffstown had the rest. Now it's over 25. So I have readjusted that. So the default budget is going to go down, I think, around 50,000.
We need
But the
to-
board has to take that action.
No, we need to bring that action to this committee. The school board has already sent our budget to this committee to review, so
Yeah, but
we need.
this committee does not deal with the default. That's why.
So are we changing any of our lines that have been provided to us?
The only line that's going to change is the default line for SAU services. So that's going to decrease, but that's a school board action. When we go back to you folks, it's going to, as you know, you go forward with a budget that is the default plus the new is your general fund appropriation. What I'm sharing with you is that that default number for SAU is going to go down by about 50,000, I think. I'll give you an exact number.
Right.
And so then, those numbers that I gave you on that overview sheet, they're going to, that total appropriation is going to be less by about 50,000.
Okay, so just out of a courtesy to the committee, just give us a heads up
Yep.
of what was changed.
Yep, but the school
After,
board,
because we just passed out all the
Right.
school budgets.
the school board is going to be the one that has to, pretty much, vote on that, and then it'll come to you next.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But I just wanted you to know that I want to at least show, and I know Jared does too, good faith, because when we came back to you after that initial presentation, we had all these teachers who said, 4 teachers, I'm going to retire. So contractually, we owed more money. I want to let you know that something else changed, and now it's less money. So that's just the good faith that we
Right.
have to have in
Right.
sharing that information.
And we appreciate
Yeah.
that. That'll be sent to us. Stacy?
With food services still as well.
Yep.
that's
So,
Next time, is that what you're saying?
yep, we just don't have the copy of it
Right.
right in front
Yeah,
of
now,
us.
the food service budget, so you're aware, is, it typically is a budget that is self-funded, meaning that revenues from state and federal, so the USDA, they give us, monies, the state gives us a little bit of money, and then it's all local sales. That's normally what happens, okay? Normal years. The last 2 years, because of COVID, the general fund has had to subsidize the food service fund to keep it afloat. So, but by and large, under normal conditions, that is a self-sustaining fund. Same thing, so they can't spend typically more money than they bring in revenues. The exceptions have been, with COVID. And then on the same thing with the grants fund, you can't spend more than what you get in grants, and that's not, both the food service and the grant funds are not raised by taxes.
So I do know Peter had a few questions about the numbers, like Peter Georgantis during
Yeah.
our public hearing.
Yeah, so
I do actually,
I have
we
the
do want to
answers
see
to
the
that.
copy and just kind of
Yep.
explain that.
So what happened was there, in your presentation, it was alluded to that food costs were going up, but then on one slide, it showed how they went
Right.
down. And in speaking with Megan, who's our food service director, she forgot to include the USDA commodities, which is federal dollars. So in essence, food costs went up.
Yep.
So she just forgot to put that federal component in.
Okay.
That was a good catch, by Peter.
So, Mr. Chair, from a school board perspective, school budget, we have the food service we need to review, and we cannot have a vote on a proposed budget without food service being provided. So we can't have, we'll have to wait on vote for our
And you
proposed
can't,
budget.
you can't have a full vote either without having that default number corrected either.
Yep.
We also have our warrant articles that we'll bring to the board, and then CIP, of course, we'll review as a courtesy. We will not have any of this ready for November 9th, which is our next Tuesday. So I don't know if we want to pivot to potentially not have a meeting on the 9th, or if we want to start with the town if they're ready.
So
But-
I'm,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
so I'm just gonna defer to Mark where are we at on select board budget deliberations.
We're still in the discussion stages.
Yep,
Where we haven't finalized it yet. We're
Okay.
looking at the budget to try to trim some more stuff. And I'll tell you right now, it's still a work in progress.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to the end of it yet.
so is it your intention to, once you approve your budget, to send it to us, or do you want to us to evaluate it independently?
As far
of
as
you?
I know, talking with Peter from us, it's gonna go to you. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll need then an updated, because we have the budget right now, we'll need an updated from what you chose to add or remove or fund through different means.
Yep.
So you're probably gonna need, so I think we're gonna take next week off, budget committee. Are you gonna have it by a week from Tuesday?
I'm hoping.
Okay, so let's plan tentatively for is it 14th?
The 16th, which is a
16th.
Tuesday, I know that we can bring at least 2 of our warrant articles will be ready. School board can also present the food service and our CIP. So if the select board isn't ready and concluded their business on Monday, the 15th, we can at least meet on the 16th, and the school board will present that information.
Okay, and just keep
Chair, what
keep
was-
me updated, and we can,
What was that date?
the 11/16.
Yeah, it'd be November 16th. Is-
And keep me updated, and I'll
Tuesday.
keep the committee updated
Yeah.
on what the progress is.
I'm pretty confident, regardless, I think we can definitely bring up the CIP and the food service, so those will be two chunks. Probably won't take us a lot of time to go through them, but I'm sure people will have questions about what are we spending those ESSER funds on, that revenue side, and what we're targeting on CIP. I think that would be a very good discussion. So I think even if the select board isn't ready on the 16th, we'll at least have some meat there for this committee to review.
Okay, and just for the public, this is just a different way of that we've typically run budget, because before we would start late November, right? And go through December, and sometimes we ended up closer to Christmas before we
Right.
ended up everything. So we're doing this kind of like a different way this year, which I kind of like ending a little earlier,
So
so.
one of the things that are gonna hold us up, or we're gonna need to deal with, we have that RFP for the new radio system.
Yep.
And the dates are not coming back, I think, till the 15th of the month. So, I mean, we've got some work ahead of us for the select board, depending on how many budgets we get in, and not budgets, but RFPs rather, and what the RFP's going to involve, and could be, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll send Peter a memo, or I'll call him tomorrow, and, you know, I'll see if we can get a date.
Okay, let's plan on doing tentatively for 11/16, and unless I notify you otherwise, I'll let Catherine know as well. And we'll go from there, and I'll set an agenda when we have a better idea of where both of our other friend committies are at.
So you have two scheduled meetings that week, 16th and the
Yeah.
18th.
Yep. Anything else for the board? All right, I'll take a motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Richard, second by Jared. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.